All right. Good afternoon, folks. I'm Jim Strohm, and we're going to talk about part 2 of the beekeeping adventure. If you didn't come yesterday, you're not going to lose anything on that because I'll touch a little bit more on what we did yesterday. But I'm not from this area. I'm from Charleston, South Carolina. But I'm coming up here to talk about bees to people that probably know as much about bees as I do. I want to introduce some local people here. If you're interested in beekeeping, we have a pad back here at the back. When you get ready to leave, just put your name and print it nice and neatly and your email address. If you're local, we've got Larry Ogle, who's a member of the Sevier County Beekeepers Association, and Miss Alma, who's the secretary of that same organization. If you want to talk about your organization a little bit, go ahead.
Go right ahead.
Well, we meet on the first Monday night of the month at the King's Library in Sevierville, King Family Library in Sevierville at 7 o'clock. And we would love to have you come. Yesterday I told the group, my husband and I, we went for like a year to the meetings before we ever got bees to kind of learn about it before we made that jump and got them and made that expense. So you're welcome to come. We'd love to have you. There's no cost. Just come and start learning about them. Even if you decide not to have bees, you'll still be able to help your neighbors by knowing what plants to plant and how to take care of bees. Thanks.
All right. Thank you, Alma.
And I'm Larry Ogle. I got interested in beekeeping through my doctor. I told this little story yesterday. I had prostate cancer. Dr. Hatcher took care of me, and like 5 years later, I said, Dr. Hatcher, I don't know anything about you. You saved my life. And you golf, what do you do? He said, no, I keep honeybees. I said, why? Dumb question. It's very enjoyable. So he got my interest up. I got started. I took a course online and going to Charleston, South Carolina for a vacation. I got on the old internet and emailed to the bee club over there. I said, I'm coming to Charleston. I'd like some business in the boat. Bees. Jim called me back immediately, and before I went to Charleston, he was up here. So we've been friends for 5 years now. It's good to have you all today.
All right. Okay, so we'll start up talking about the bees and stuff here. Yesterday I just kind of went through the biology of the bee. Today I'm going to talk about if you're on the fence and not sure if beekeeping is for you, maybe this will help you out a little bit. Of course, a bee does have a scientific name and all that stuff, but what we're going to do is we're just going to call it the honeybee. They've been keeping bees, we know, for at least 9,000 years. They actually went through some of the temples in Egypt and found the honeybees in those temples. And in Syria, which is in a lot of trouble today, they found bees there. Actually, in the Egyptian tombs, they found some honey, still good. It was hard as a rock, but they had to heat it up and soften it a little bit, but it's supposedly still edible. Why do people keep bees? Well, there's several reasons why. Basically, it's the only insect produces food. Doesn't take a lot of money. I'm not a rich person, and you'll see a lot of beekeepers, and I always tell people, if you want to make money beekeeping, want to make $10,000, well, come into it with about $10,500 and you'll be good to go. You can do it any place, don't have to have a big place. I'm in Charleston in a residential area. I got 1/7 of an acre, and I got 3 hives in my backyard. I only had one, but I split them a couple of times because it was growing so much. But I'm going to move them out. Anywhere it's got flowers. Healthy hives are going to reward you with honey, that liquid gold. And they'll transfer pollen and they'll pollinate your plants. And you'll have bigger flowers, a better garden because of honeybees. This is Dr. Wheeler. He said a long time ago that the honeybee colony together is a superorganism. You take one bee by itself, it's probably a pretty, it's a pretty simple insect. But you put them all together, they do a lot of things based on pheromones. The queen puts off a substance, a pheromone, a perfume type of thing, and each one of them is individual. They put their own out, but that controls the colony and tells them what they need to do. They reproduce and they grow their colony by themselves. They thermoregulate. They regulate the temperature of that hive. This is some pictures taken with a thermal camera when it was about 18 degrees outside, showing the heat inside there. Even though it was 18 degrees outside in Charleston, it was 85 degrees inside those hives. So what they're doing is they're getting in there and kind of shivering and shaking and rubbing against each other, keeping it warm. In the summertime, like today, I guess you guys skip spring here, when it's 90, 95 degrees, they keep it about 92 in there, and the way they do that is they'll bring back, some of the bees are called mules, they'll bring back water, they spray it on the wings of the other bees at the entrance, they'll flap their wings and humidify that hive to keep it cool. So they regulate. They build their own house, their own comb. They use wax from their bodies to build the honeycomb, and they form it into perfect shapes where they can store food, where the queen can lay eggs. And the comb, the whole hive itself, breathes as a comb. We have to ventilate it because if not, the humidity would build up inside of it. But they're actually inside there breathing. But you want to let that air get through it. And the bees can't really live all that well away from the hive, away from the rest of the colony. They have to live together. Social insects. And they practice something called trophilis. And what that is a sharing of food. As I mentioned yesterday, anybody like honey here? If you do, you know, that's bee vomit is what that is, okay? Sorry to disillusion you, but the bees actually take nectar in from the flowers, okay? The liquid in that's that you're smelling. They'll suck that into a holding stomach, and then they will expunge that and pass it to another bee inside the hive. That bee will take it and store it in that honeycomb and then flap their wings to dry it to turn it from nectar to honey. The nectar is about 80% moisture. They try to dry that honey down to about 19% moisture so it runs real slowly like syrup. And they'll share food, and by sharing food, they're also sharing those pheromones in there. Occupants of the colony, well, you got the drones, the boys, and then you've got the ladies, the queen and the workers, all females. The girls do all the work, okay? The guys get a break. There's the guys, big brown eyes, right? Impress those girls, right? The girls like big brown eyes. What they do, the drones really have a couple of functions in life. One is they eat. All right. The second one is they mate with the queens. And they'll go out every day to a drone congregation area. And I don't know if this is one or not, but they all go out there and fly around. And I mean, the drones, you can hear them because they're pretty good sized bees, and you can actually hear them buzzing. They call them a drone because that buzzing sound that they make when they fly. But they go to these drone congregations, and they'll go there every afternoon waiting for a queen. And when that queen comes along, well, then they'll hook up, as we call it. And that's the queen girl right there. There are virgin queens born inside the hive, but they'll fly off and they'll mate with those drones in that drone congregation area in the air. And it kills the drones, so the women get even. But they call that polyandry, okay? And she's kind of a floozy. She'll mate with about 8 to 12 of those male drones, okay? Which is really good because it kind of diversifies their gene pool. And it actually helps the bees a little bit. But she'll mate with those drones, and then she'll come back to the hive and never leave again. Now, that's hearsay. I can't prove that she never leaves again. But she's like a one and done girl. She's back home, and then she's a homebody. There's a queen. She does two things. She is the royal egg layer. And she produces the pheromone that gets that whole organism doing what they're supposed to be doing. It's called the queen mandibular pheromone, QMP. She puts that out, and she's just a figurehead. She's in there, all right? She's the royal egg layer. One good thing about her is you notice all these other bees around her. They call that her retinue. Okay? And a well-formed retinue, in other words, she's putting off a pretty strong pheromone. All these other bees around her, they're going around her, and they're touching her. And then when they go off to the hive, they pass that pheromone on to the remainder of the colony. And that's what keeps that organism moving. The stronger the queen is, well mated, the stronger her pheromone will be. And as she gets older, as she ages, that will somewhat diminish. And as it starts to diminish, they might get together and say, she's getting kind of old, let's replace her, okay? They can actually replace the queen all by themselves. All right, so there she is, and she doesn't want to be replaced, though, okay? So there's 3 times they would replace her. As an emergency, let's say Jim, the dumb beekeeper, got in there and pulled a frame up and maybe killed her. Well, they can actually take one of those newborn eggs, feed it a special food called royal jelly, right, a real rich food, and they can make their own queen. And that would be an emergency situation. The second one there is if it's a supersedure. In other words, they don't like the queen. Maybe she's got bad breath, or she's carrying heat with her or something. They want to get rid of her. They'll just do what they call a supersedure, and they'll just replace her. And that queen comes out, and then the 2 of them are going to have a little battle to see who's really the champion of the hive there. And they'll fight to the death. And the 3rd time they'll replace it is when they get ready to swarm. You might see bees in a tree sometime. When they're in a tree, they're in that big knothole, got a small opening. They can defend that pretty well. But she's laying these eggs, and she'll do 1,000 to 3,000 a day. While she's laying those eggs, they're growing. The colony's getting bigger and bigger and bigger. Well, as that colony gets larger, what will happen is they'll outgrow it. And they'll say, well, we got a 1-bedroom place here. We need a 3-bedroom place. So they're going to take about 60% of those bees and take off with them. Now, before they do that, what they'll do is they'll take that queen and they'll run her around. Just run her, and they won't feed her. Now remember, she's going to be pregnant, right? She's a big girl, going to be laying eggs all the time. She's pregnant her whole life. Well, they diet and exercise. They run her and they don't feed her. She thins down a little bit, and now she can fly with them when they swarm. I've seen some where they didn't do that, and in a tree, come right out of the tree, and the queen goes right straight to the ground because she's so big and heavy. She couldn't fly. So usually, if they have a chance, they'll try to slim her down before they take off. Can only be 1 queen, and they call that a monogeneous society. Only 1 leader for that social area. So only 1. And if you're going to replace the queen, you better get rid of the old one first, because that old girl might be a tough old girl, and if you put a new queen in there, she's liable to take her. So I've seen people put a new queen in and not get rid of the old queen. Next thing they know, that new queen's gone. Communication, let's talk about that with bees. Well, humans, we can text, we can email, we can call people on the phone, we can just talk, write letters. Some primates, the apes and stuff, they actually can use sign language, understand colors and shapes. How about honeybees? Their communication primarily by dance. They use the dance to determine where is food. That's called a waggle dance. What the bee will do is it'll come inside and it'll waggle in a direction that tells them which direction the flowers are that have nectar. And they'll just circle around, and they'll come back and do it again over and over and over again, trying to sell that to the rest of the colony. And then the length of that waggle is kind of relates to the length that the flowers are. So that's one way they communicate. The second way they communicate is by that odor plume, okay? The pheromones. All right. If possibly, and you've seen this movie before, where they what's it called? I can't think of the name of the movie now. They overtook people's bodies. Well, they could tell when somebody wasn't one of them by that smell, okay, or that whatever. So then the crowd, the social, that plume, then they'll say, you're not part of our colony, and they'll attack. All right. So they use communications a lot by smell. All right. The workers, all right, all girls. They make the decisions within the hive. The queen really doesn't make a decision. She's not the one that says, let's go swarm. She's not the one who does anything. All she does is when the workers, they decide. They do all the work, and they're about 95 to 99% of the hive, the girls. They bring the food in, and their tasks are, when they're 1 to 10 days old, they're taking care of the babies. 11 to 21 days old, they're doing intermediate duties such as guarding, etc. After they're 21 to 35 days old, they're out there foraging, and they only live about 6 or 7 weeks in the springtime. And again, as I said yesterday, that's because their wings wear out. They just can't fly. When they're foraging, they're bringing back 4 things to the hive: water for cooling and for mixing with food, propolis, which comes from trees. That's from the sap of trees. And they use that as their super glue. They glue their hive shut. They can't get duct tape, so they'll use this, and it works just as good as duct tape, believe me. They bring back pollen, and they'll bring back nectar. They're vegetarians, so they don't eat meats. They eat carbohydrates, and their protein is the pollen, and the carbohydrates would be the nectar. They're bringing in pollen all the time, and you'll see it on the basket on their back legs, and it's about 10 to 30% crude protein, essential for those babies. They have to have that protein to grow. A good takeaway, if you're a beekeeper, watch that front door. Right now, your bees should be just packing that pollen in, bringing it in, and you'll see them completely loaded down with pollen on that hind leg. Have to have that. The development of those worker bees, they start off as an egg, and they're staying in that egg state for about 3 days. And they're fed that royal jelly for 3 days. Now, if they want to make it a queen, they'll feed it royal jelly for 6 more days, okay? And that'll be the larva stage. And that's when it'll cause it to grow into that queen shape. And then they turn into pupa, and they stay in that stage for about 12 days, and then they'll hatch. And if you're a beekeeper, you need to know these development times. That can kind of tell you about the health of your hive, whether or not your queen is there, because she's hard sometimes to spot, especially for old people like me with bad eyes. This is what they look like in the field, and you can just barely tell there's eggs in these top cells. Eggs, 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 and down in here you can start seeing, it's starting to look like it's a little curlicue. Those are turned into the larva, a little bit larger larva. Bigger larva, completely fill in the cell with that larva. And then on day number 9, the bees, the worker bees, nurse bees will come through, and they'll cap that with an edible substance so the workers can chew their way out when their 21st day, that's their birthday. And they'll come out like that. Now, pollination is one of the most important things about bees. Without the bees to do pollinating, we'd have to pay a lot more money for things like almonds, because almonds are 100% pollinated by bees, honeybees, the only thing that pollinates them. Apples, about 90%. Blueberries, about 90%. It's got a lot of others on here that not so much, like strawberries. I've actually had people pay me to bring bees to a strawberry patch. And they're not the primary pollinator of strawberries, but they do pollinate those. But a lot of fruits, vegetables rely on honeybees for pollination. This is from Whole Foods. Whole Foods took a picture of their produce section of their grocery store. And this is the produce section with bees. Here's the produce section without bees. Shocking when you look at the two. I'll go back and forth a couple times. There's the comparison, and you can see the difference. It's really a pretty stark difference when there's no honeybees. There might be other insects that might eventually adapt and pollinate those things. But now, you're on the fence. Well, should I be a beekeeper or should I not be a beekeeper? Well, to be or not to be, right? Well, what does it take? Well, let's talk about it. Here's the 4 things you need. You need a good location. You need good seasonal management, okay? Bees are what we call managed pollinators. You have to take care of them, just like when you get that new puppy. You have to manage the pests, and you need to educate yourself if you're going to become a beekeeper. So what's a good location? Favorable says provide a windbreak. You don't want something on peak of the hill where they're getting blown all over the place. They don't fly real good in wind above 20 miles an hour. Avoid full sun and deep shade. I keep some bees almost in full sun. They actually do. The sunnier it is, I found out the better they do. Full sun in the south in Charleston is a little rough on the bees because it gets pretty hot down there. But up here, I don't know. Although today it's supposed to be, 88 out here? So early summer. But I get at least 6 hours of sun on my hives a day, minimum. Firm, dry ground land with good ventilation. And I face them to the east, to the southeast, the opening. I want that facing to the east so when the sun comes up, hits right in the front door and says, okay, girls, get up and go get me some honey. That's my goal. Unfortunate if you're down in a gully somewhere where it's kind of still and stays damp. If you got fog up here in the morning, that's not a great place to put your bees. Not in the peak of the hill. Don't put them underneath a shade tree where they're shady all day long. And I keep them away from places that the children are at, pets, tied up pets, tied up horses, things like that, and pedestrians or traffic. And if so, aim the entrance a little bit away from those areas. I've seen people have them where they'll put one of the mesh pieces of wood that they get from Home Depot or one of those places, a 6 by an 8 foot. If the entrance is here, the bees will fly right out and right up over the top of it. If you've got like a walkway or something you want them to avoid. Out of sight, out of mind is usually a good rule for the bees. Seasonal management. It's the same every year. Bees follow the clock, okay? An annual cycle. The growth rise right now in the spring with rapid expansion as soon as pollen and nectar is available. So as soon as you see those red buds and the red maples pop around here, that means your bee is going to start up. And it'll accelerate towards a peak in April and May. So there's the bees right before that, and here's the front, you can see over on the left, that's the front of my bees like in March, and here they were last week. That's the front of my bees. That growth has really started up. They call that bearding when they get on the front of that hive like that. And it's a natural cycle. Starting over here, that actually is December 22nd. December 22nd is called the winter solstice. What happens then? The days start getting longer. Just a little bit, a minute or two every day, right? Well, the bees know that, and they start growing, and they'll grow a little bit more. And like I said, now you're up to about April. They've got peak growth right now. That queen is laying as many eggs as she can. Why is she laying that much? Because those forage are bringing in lots of food. She says, I got lots of food, I'm going to make a lot of babies. So she's putting them out at max. And right about then, about early March or so, end of April, what is it up here when they start selling bees, Larry?
You usually get your packages in April.
In April. In Charleston, we're a little bit ahead of you. We usually get them mid-May, sometime like that, where our weather gets a little warmer down there faster. So they start selling bees then. But what happens right here when all this maximum buildup, that's when you start seeing swarms. You've gotten a couple calls for swarms today, yesterday and today. And I've got 4 waiting for me Monday when I go back to Charleston. And then the honey flow starts. Now in Charleston, it's already started. It's going to be any minute now. It's going to start up here. And the bees start bringing it in. Now what happens? This is where the beekeepers live because they're packing them boxes on the honey. The bees are bringing that honey back and loading them up. And what are we doing? Well, we're going to make sure we leave them some honey because they're actually making it for themselves. But of course, we're going to help them out and get rid of that extra for them a little bit. How much can you get out of a hive? This man right here would probably know. I say somewhere 4 or 5 gallons a year. Season, it changes. 100 pounds a hive. That's pretty good. 8 pounds to a gallon. Think about that for a second. Okay, so then, guess what? Here's the summer solstice. Is June 22nd. Look what happens. The queen starts. The flow stops, and she started laying off of those eggs now. She says, not as much food coming in, so she backs off a little bit. So then it comes back down, and we go right through it, and that's the end of the thistle, right on down to the end of the year, and then we'll start over next year. Now, every year is different. The weather's different every year. And the bees are different every year. Some years, boy, they'll just boom, and they'll produce more honey than you can shake a stick at or stir it up with a stick. But other years, yeah, not so much, okay? But so it's dependent. It's a crop. Think of it as a crop. Sometimes a crop flourishes, sometimes not so much. The seasonal management part, that's where the skill comes in. Beekeeping's easy if you keep all your bees and keep them happy. You got to predict when that nectar flow is and try to ensure that you've got the most amount of bees in there to go get that nectar and turn it into honey. All right? Maximum population at exactly the right time, and prevent skillful management to prevent that swarming impulse. Because if they swarm, they just took 60% of your workers with them. And that's 60% less honey you're going to get because that's the ladies that go out and gather the food every day. So the goal is Get a bunch of bees, but don't let them end up in a tree like that right there, okay? Keep them in your hive. And you do that by adding boxes or splitting the hives into 2 hives if there's too many. It's a couple of tricks, and you don't learn that overnight. It takes a while to learn that. And what you do is you follow these experienced beekeepers around and see what they're doing and learn from that. The other part's pest management. Okay, just like we have to get our dogs shots and flea medicine and all that stuff, we have pests that bug these bees. And we're going to find a variety of strategies that are safe, effective, and economical. In other words, cheap. And they'll lead to a sustainable level of control, okay? And it's we're looking for long-term approaches to pest management. I try to be chemical-free. I don't like to use chemicals on bees because that actually will filter down into the wax, which might get into the honey. I don't use any chemicals if I can keep from it. The other thing you need is educated and outfitted beekeepers. They should educate yourself with books. And a lot of people don't read anymore. I suggest get lots of books with a lot of good pictures, okay? You look a lot, but if you just have to read 200 pages, it's no fun. A lot of pictures helps out. The internet is amazing. There's tons of videos and websites. Just be careful, because there's also tons of bad information out there. Everybody thinks they're an expert and they put stuff out. Amazon's got a lot of good books. I buy used books. When I find somebody that's a beekeeper says, I'm not going to be a beekeeper anymore, I said, well, what are you going to do with all your books? I know a good resource you can donate them to. A formal beekeeping class recommended, although not required. You really don't have to have. You can learn it on your own. It can be a self-taught skill, believe me. Join a club, though. I highly, highly recommend a club. You get a room full of people just like the people in here that you might add up 1,000 years of beekeeping experience with the people in a beekeeping club room. And you will get tons of opinions on what to do. And remember, they're opinions, okay? I say if you ask 10 beekeepers a question, you're going to get 11 different answers. So it's an art, it's not a science. The engineers have trouble becoming beekeepers because they like to do this and this and this and this. Problem is the bees don't read those books. So now you have to have, that when you go to the bee club, you'll find out too, you'll get these catalogs from the bee companies. Believe me, I found out they'll sell you every single thing in the catalog. So you don't need that. So you go to the club and they'll find out, get you a mentor. They'll find out what's the proper tools needed to inspect, control, and maintain a beehive rather than spending all your money. Okay, get some good books. That one in the middle, believe it or not, Beekeeping for Dummies is pretty good. It's a pretty good reference. Like I say, and they're cheap paperback, and you can get them secondhand. You might have something highlighted in there. That doesn't bother me a bit. Tons of websites, and believe it or not, Backyard Beekeepers. This is American Bee Federation. Brushy Mountain is they sell bees, but they have videos on there that you can sit and watch videos in your pajamas and learn all about beekeeping. And then I found out right here, look at this. Agriculture of Tennessee, that's Tennessee, University of Tennessee. There is a ton of resources right on your home state website. All about pages about bees and beekeeping. Easy to find, and it's local. And then you can go to YouTube and you'll find, all you have to do is search for beginners, beekeeping for beginners, and you'll find all kinds of information. Tons of information. Join the local club. We've got a couple reps here, but when this is over, please talk to them about it. All right, if you're interested at all. Get some equipment. Here's the things you need. A smoker. You should have a smoker that calms the bees. A hive tool. Again, they'll take those frames and they'll glue them shut. You need a hive tool to open up the boxes. A veil is probably desired. Okay, the only way a bee can permanently damage you is if they sting you in the eye. So I would suggest as a minimum, at least cover your eyes with some sort of a veil. Or a suit, or a jacket. I used to wear the full suit head to toe. They've went now to a jacket you can wear. And if you feel comfortable, you can unzip that and just wear the hood part of this thing. But it'll protect you and help you out. Sometimes you have bees that are a little more defensive than others. People ask me, are they killer bees? And I say, well, they're only killers if they're carrying a gun, okay? All right. Some gloves are a great idea. I don't wear them a lot because I kind of lose sensation in my fingers, so I don't wear them. I'll suggest to you, if you do get gloves, everybody says, well, I wear a large glove. Wear one size smaller glove than what you normally wear, because that'll give you a tight fit, which gives you a little bit better sensation when you're moving around in there with the gloves on. The bee suit, you're going to have 60,000 stinging insects inside there. Wear whatever makes you comfortable, so you can move nice and slowly and control your controlled movements. And if you're taking your dog out there, make sure you take care of the dog too, and suit him up. Rover likes to be suited. We'll talk about the hive itself. I just have a part of a hive up here, but you might see them with several boxes on them. And they start out with all these components, and we'll talk about each one of them. Here's the disclaimer part. There's as many ways to keep bees as there are bees to keep. Everybody's got their own idea, and whatever works for you is what you need to do. Okay, so here's the typical. It's called a Langstroth hive, and that's after Dr. Lorenzo Langstroth, who developed this hive. And it was developed so he could remove frames and take honey out without destroying the hive. Inside that box, there are frames, and you can actually just pull it right out. The honey would be on there, and then you can get that honey off and put it right back in, and you don't kill the hive. You don't kill the bees inside the hive. So let's talk with it. It's got boxes all over the place, lids, etc. We'll break it down. Number one, you need a hive stand. Get your bees up off the ground. They suggest anywhere from 6 to 18 inches off the ground. You'll find out that starting to pick these boxes up, and if they're way down there, then you got to pick them way up. It's back-breaking work. And this young fellow back here will attest to that. I suggest the smallest box you can find, and then put a bunch of them on there so you save that back a little bit. But definitely get them up off the ground. That way you don't have to bend over quite so far. And it kind of keeps pests away. You keep them up in the air like that. When the raccoons get ready to go in, or the possums, they raise up. And when they raise up, they open up that underbelly, and the bees will know right where to attack. So get them up off the ground a little bit. I don't have bears in the Charleston area, but you do. I suggest put a fence up before you put the hive in there. Electrify it. They've got the ones now with the solar where you can do it with tape. Put that up first. Get the bees used to not going in that yard. Okay? Because if you just put the hives out there and then put the electric fence up, that ain't going to keep a bee out if he knows there's honey, or a bear out if he knows there's honey in there. He will knock that electric fence down a heartbeat. Just put one up now and get them trained to not go in that area. It's the best way to do it. The solar electric fences are pretty cheap, actually. And they're easy to work with. It's just a tape on there. They start up with a bottom board, and you can have two different kinds of bottom boards. Solid bottom boards. That's what you got, Larry? Is it solid? Okay. Yeah. Okay, the solid bottom board, just what it is, it's a piece of wood across the bottom. The secondary thing is the one on the left there. It's called a screened bottom board. It's got like some wire mesh screen, and you can slide and insert this piece right here. You can slide that in and out, so you can ventilate the hives at different times of the year. And the other thing is if pests get on it, the pests are small enough where they can fall through the screen, but the bees can't. So it's called a screen bottom board, and they call it an IPM board, Integrated Pest Management Board. The bees chase the bugs off, and the bugs fall through the screen. Put a little Crisco oil or Vaseline on that white board, and then when you pull it out, they're stuck to it. One way to do it. Okay, the bottom box, just like this box up here, they call it the brood. That's where the queen lays eggs, into the brood box. You don't have to have a deep box like that. You can have a smaller one. You can use any size. They actually come in deep, medium, and small. I use mediums is all I use. Now the queen excluder is a little opening, has openings where these bees can go through, but the queen cannot. She's pregnant, pretty good sized girl. She will stay, she can't get through there. You don't want her laying eggs where the honey's at. So it excludes her from going into the upper section of the hive. Some people use them, some people don't. On the entrance, we can use these entrance reducers, and you can make a real small opening a little bit larger opening, or you can open it wide up. What you do is depending on what your population is, because they need to defend the hive. If there's not a lot of bees in there, it's early in the season, you're just getting started, we start out with a small opening. As the bees grow, and now they're starting to fill that box a little better, enough bees there to put at the front door to guard, we'll open it up a little bit. In the summertime, when they start bearding up like that, and they're all over the front, you see them single file trying to get in and out. They can't get in with the pollen. Then I'll open it wide open and let them come and go as they please. The next thing up, the box right above the brood, if you add a box, they call it a super. And that's because that's what that honey is. It's super. All right. That's where the bees store their honey. And they'll make enough for themselves, and they'll make a little extra just as a bonus for you giving them a nice house to live in. The biggest mistake first-year beekeepers make is they take too much honey, and they'll starve their bees. Because October, November, December, January, there's not a lot to eat for the bees. Now the frames, that's the pieces that are inside that hive. They come in pure wax, made out of wax formed into the shape, or they can be plastic, like this one. They got what they call a right cell, which actually is coated with a wax. And if it's not coated with a wax, you just melt some wax and paintbrush it on there. The bees will fill this frame out with wax, and they'll store their food, and the queen will lay her eggs on those frames. They come in different colors, the yellow or the black. I like the black for the brood area because I can see the eggs. The eggs are white, so I can see that contrast in color against it a little easier than the yellow. I use these where my supers are at because I can spin them in that extractor and not necessarily damage them too easy. That plastic is pretty durable. The covers. On top of the hive, it's actually got an inner cover, that one on the bottom over there on the left, and then an outer cover. And the outer cover usually has some sort of a foil or thin sheet metal type cover over the top of it just to protect it from the elements. Now that one on the right is called a garden hive cover, and it has no special function. According to my wife, it's purty. So she likes that. Now, I don't care for it myself, but it's purty. This is that inner cover I was talking about, and it is just pretty much an insulator. It just helps insulate the hive for heat and cold. Feeders, you do have to feed bees when they're first starting out until the nectar flow starts. Some people feed them all year long. If you have to feed your bees all year long, you're gonna run up a good bill for sugar. You shouldn't have to do that. The bees are supposed to be, if you feed them, guess what? It's like you're enabling them to be lazy bees. You're not making them go out and find some food. It's out there, they just have to find it. But you could put feeders inside. This one fits right down inside there. It's the same size as one of those frames. You can put tubs on top that they come up through, and they'll go onto these little boards, and they can walk around and get it without drowning. Or you can put them at the entrance, put a little jar at the entrance, put a little sugar water in there. That kind of gets them going. And when you're first starting a colony, they need to make wax. That helps them build wax up so they can put it on the frames. They have buckets with screens, and you turn that upside down, and they'll put their little tongues up there and just like almost like a hummingbird and get the sugar water out. Other types of hives, this is what people think about when they think about beehives. It's called a skep. They're actually against the law in the United States because you have to kill the bees to get the honey out. So they don't sell those anymore. Top bar hive. This is kind of I call it people that don't want honey. They just want to help the bees. They put these out here, and it's pretty much all natural. The bees will build, all these are little separate bars inside there, and each bar, the bees will build, and everything completely natural. No frames required. Problem is sometimes they'll stick together, but if you just want bees for your garden, you're not really concerned about getting honey out of it, this is probably a pretty good setup for you. You don't have to do a whole lot to it. The Warre hive, this is I call this a designer hive. It's a little smaller, and it's got plexiglass windows on the side so you can open up and look in and see the bees. And it's kind of neat, but there's not a lot of room for the bees in there, so they swarm a lot more frequently in those types of hive. You might have heard about this guy, highly advertised, the flow hive. Yeah, nothing to it, right? The bees come into it and you just turn the knob and you get you a jar full of honey, right? I won't say it's a gimmick, but what it is the same thing. On the bottom you have your brood right here down at the bottom, but this top box up is actually the flow hive part of it. And what it is it's got plastic frames inside of it and a crank on the side. And what you do is you take that crank and you put it in, and when they're full of honey, you just turn it and it splits the hive like this. And the honey drains out, comes out these little tubes on the side. I've got 6 beekeepers in my club that have got these, and not a one of them made it through the winter. Now, I know it was just bad beginner's luck or what, but what happens is you split those, but they're still capped. The bees don't know there's no honey in there. They think there's honey in there, but there's not. So it's kind of confusing for the bees. So maybe they'll figure it out eventually, but for right now, I'm not really in favor of them. Observation hives. If you haven't had a chance, go back in here in the main area back there. I've got an observation hive that's got some live bees in there, and we'll show you some live bees. And then there's my hive at home. Not really. No, not really. That's what my wife wishes it would look like. Why be a beekeeper? Risk and reward. Well, you might get stung. Does it hurt? Yeah, it hurts. You might have problems with pests, and there's some labor involved, okay? There's some lifting in there, and there's some hot times. You got to put a suit on. When it's 90 degrees, you still got to go look at those bees, right? Rewards, not a lot of money. Doesn't take a lot of money. Not too much time or space needed. You'll get a little surplus honey, and you'll get more and bigger flowers, fruits, and vegetables. What's the time requirement? This is what I tell people, 50 hours a year. So what's that work out to? Well, it's about 2 to 3 hours per visit. That's time, and that includes suiting up, getting your smoker ready, going in the hive, taking your notes, closing the hive back up, and getting back. So 2 to 3 hours. If you got 2 hives, just add another 15 minutes because you've done all the suiting up stuff. All you got to do is go to the next hive. But I say 15 to 20 visits a year, and this is how I break it down. During the spring, you got to get in there every 2 weeks, 2 to 3 weeks, because this is when the population's going. If not, you might find your bees up there in that corner up there. And the neighbor's going to call you up and say, hey, man, you got bees over here 40 feet in the air. Come get them. So 2 to 3 hours, every 2 to 3 weeks. That's about 7 visits during the spring. In the summertime, maybe about every 3 weeks. Okay, slows down. Fall, I go in about once a month, so that's about 3 visits. And in the wintertime, about every 6 weeks, a couple of visits. That works out to 16 visits at about 3 hours each. About 48 hours. Can you go on vacation? Sure you can. And this is why you want to get in a beekeeping club. You know, get you another beekeeper and say, I'm going on vacation this week. I'm going to take a peek at my bees. And when you go on vacation, I'll take a peek at yours. They'll share labor there. So although some people don't want other beekeepers looking in their beehive. So, you know, it's up to you how you work that out. But that's what I figured the time requirement is for 1 or 2 hives. Now, if you got a big yard with a bunch of hives, you're going to spend more time than that. What's it cost? Here's it. Bottom line. Get the checkbook out, Mom. Now, this is Man Lake. Now, I'm not promoting any one club, but this is Man Lake, and they're man-lake.com. That's a bee equipment seller. They don't sell bees, just beekeeping equipment. This is called a Pro Pollinator Kit. It has assembled and painted hive bodies, 2 of them, wooden frames inside those frames. So there's 20 of those. A painted telescoping cover, that's that top part. A painted bottom board. A cedar hive stand. This is a whole deal here. A hooded jacket. Gloves. Smoker and fuel. Now I use that cheap fuel, or expensive, I guess, dependent, pine straw. A brush, so you can brush your bees out of the way. The hive tool you need. A book. Comes with a book with lots of pictures in it. The Backyard Beekeeper. And a 1-year subscription to a magazine, which comes out monthly. And all of that costs $328.95. So it's a hobby. It's probably cheaper than kayaking, though, or something like that, you know, or whitewater rafting. But you can actually get that in 10 frame. And for women, And for people with me with weak backs, I suggest they have an 8-frame pollinator kit, and it's a little cheaper even yet. It's $325. So it's a little bit cheaper. But what it is instead of having 10 frames across in there, it's 8 frames. So it's a little bit easier on that back lifting. And I always suggest to women, I'm not being a sexist, but I know women have got a little less upper body strength. So especially if you're going to be doing the beekeeping, a lot of women do the beekeeping and their husband's scared to go out in the backyard because they're afraid their wife's going to sick them bees on her. Okay, you can buy a bee package and you'll get 10,500 bees and a can of syrup and a queen. And the queen's in a little cage, got a cork and a marshmallow on there. What do they sell a package of bees for here, Larry?
180.
180. See, they're a little cheaper. We're cheaper in Charleston. We can get them for about $120. It's actually, with a marked queen, you can buy a package of, and they're Italian bees. So you have to feed them pizza and stuff and a lot of pot. No, they're Italian bees, $103 with a marked queen. So that's Italian bees, which is probably the most common bee in the southeast United States. Take a class. I suggest a formal class, not really required, but it's suggested. What'd you pay for your class? You did yours online, right?
It's like $300, but it's a whole year.
A whole year, okay. We teach a class in Charleston. It's 2 full days. That's all day Saturday, all day Sunday. $75. You bring another person, you share the equipment, the books and all that stuff and the handouts, but it's another $25. I used to do it on Valentine's Day. I did one on Valentine's weekend, and I said, beekeeping class, bring your honey. So 75 for one, 100 for two. And that included a membership to the State Beekeepers Association and to a membership to the club for a year. So it was pretty good. What can you get out of it? Yeah, all this good stuff, right? Flowers, honey, get little bear bottles. Nobody, you don't get those free. And of course, this is the good deal right there. All those pretty flowers and fruits and vegetables you're going to get. Real quick, how am I doing on time? Let's see how I'm doing here. Let me look at it. I got 13 minutes. I'm okay. Pests. Honeybees have enemies. There's people that like honey besides bees, okay? Those are the 3 primary. There are others, but these are the 3 primary. This varroa mite, it's a small bug that gets on the back of a bug, of the bee, and bites them, gives them viruses. Small hive beetles and wax moths, and we'll talk a little bit about each one. But if you keep your hive strong, most of those pests can be avoided. I'll not say all of them, but most of them. And that's, how do you do that? With frequent examinations. In other words, that schedule I told you. Don't let them go for 6 months without looking in there and expect everything's going to be okay. You wouldn't do that with your dog. Prevention, if you see problems, don't let it go. I tell people, if you've got a problem in your hive, it's not going to go away by itself. You have to do something. You have to prevent it from escalating. And hopefully you won't see very many of these. Examining your hive, you want to get in there and look for disease or pests and what to do. For example, watch the front door. The bees bringing in pollen, and get used to looking at what does your brood pattern look like in there, right? What does your hive smell like? Big key. If you walk up to your hive and you start smelling something really bad, that's something's fermented in there, that's a problem. Usually you don't smell a fermented smell around a beehive. And look at the entrance. Are there a lot of bees come and going all day long? That's what you're hoping for. There's like a healthy frame. I asked this to a beekeeper here, and those are the baby bees. That's brood in there. They store honey around that. That's with the white wax cappings on top. There's some pollen down here. There's some eggs that haven't been capped. Let's ask the knowledgeable beekeeper here. See that line right there? What would you think would cause that, sir? Not put you on the spot. The line across, see the 2 lines coming across? Exactly. What they do is if they have pure wax foundation, they'll put wires in there to support it. Just a little, it's almost the size of fishing line, but it's wire. They'll put wire across there. Well, the bees see that and they say, I ain't using that cell. There's wire in that cell. They don't want nothing to do with that metal. So this is funny. I had people say, oh, there's a problem with the queen. She's not laying. Look, along those lines right there. That just happened to be where the wire is at that's supporting the wax. This guy knows his beekeeping here. I got to be on my toes. This is stored honey. This is when they'll start storing that honey. They usually will start at the top and work their way down. And what they do is you'll look at it and you'll see liquid. That's the nectar. And then you'll see bees sitting on it, and they're just fanning away. They're drying that nectar. And as soon as they get that moisture content down, then they'll put a wax coating on it. Like if it was us, we'd put it in a jar and put a lid on it. Well, they don't have no jars or lids. What they do is they'll fan it till the moisture content goes down, and then they'll put wax on the top of it. That's what this beautiful white stuff is on the top. Wax coatings that they're filling out. And you don't want to extract it until it's completely coated, because if not, it'll crystallize on you and it'll harden up, and then you'll be complaining and say, these dumb bees. Okay. These are eggs. And boy, if you get a queen that lays eggs like that, boy, you want to enter her in the county fair and get a blue ribbon for that girl, because that is what we call an excellent brood pattern. She's laying eggs every possible space that she can. If she fills out that whole side of bees, that's 1,800 new bees in less than 12 days, because it's capped on day 9. Day 21 they come out. So this is somewhere between day 9 and day 21. You're going to have another 1,800 bees in about 12 days. Okay, so there's the good. We got the good, bad, and the ugly. Here comes the ugly. Let's talk first off about the problems. Varroa mites. That's the #1 threat to bees. And right now they're telling you, the PhD people, they're saying if you own bees, you have varroa mites. And those varroa mites are bad. It's small but visible, and 85% of them, I mean, you'll see them, but 85% of them are hidden. They're underneath that cell where she had capped. That's where they hide out. If you find one mite, that indicates you need to go deeper in the hive and see if there's more in there. It's kind of like if you look in your house and you see a roach running around, say, uh-oh, there's one roach. What do? You get something out to get rid of the rest of them because you think there might be a whole family in there, right? Same thing with these mites. They try to get on the babies, this side over here. They try to get on there. That's where they grow, underneath there, underneath primarily the drones, the males. There's an adult that's latched onto a bee, right there, a little spot. So now we've got a problem with these things. And it says, well, what do? Well, the foragers don't fly as often. They lose weight because they're actually starting to get some viruses. They don't live as long. The hemolymph, which is their blood, is reduced. Their blood in their body is reduced. It's like they're running a couple pints short. And it actually will damage the skeleton if there's more than 5 mites in one of those cells where the drones are at. And virus transmission is the big thing. It gives them a paralysis, and it also deforms their wings. The viruses will do that. Detection, well, we use those screen bottom boards, and we'll put a little Crisco on there, and hopefully the bees will knock some of them off. I'll sprinkle powdered sugar in there. The bees are licking each other, and then sometimes they'll knock varroa mites off. The other thing is, we'll uncap some cells. I'll just take like a fork type instrument and scrape the top of some of the drone cells and see if there's varroa in there. If I see them in there, it's big trouble. There's other things you can do. You can also do a roll in either alcohol or sugar, and this talks a little bit about it. You put them in, the bees, you gather up a cup full of bees, put them in there, pour some sugar on top of it, shake it up, and then dump the sugar out, and the mites will come off, but the bees will be okay. But they're not going to be happy when they come out. They're not amused at all by the sugar. So when you uncap them, this lady right here is going to be in big trouble if she does that. What you want to do is uncap them, get your track shoes on, and run like crazy, because they'll come after you. There's a bunch of treatments, and they say use a screen bottom board. You can actually get rid of the drones. Get a whole. They make frames that just for nothing but drones. That's where the varroa like to hang out. Take a whole frame of those and put it in the freezer. Kill them. Take the queen out for a couple of days. If she's not laying any babies, you take the queen out for a while, and then the varroa say, well, there's no new babies. I don't have anywhere to live. They go away. And there's a whole bunch of treatments. Stay away from treatments. I don't use them. Why? Here's this guy. He's a very smart guy, Michael Bush. He says, we're treating these pests, getting rid of them. He says, what we're doing is we're breeding wimpy bees. And the pests are super pests. They're becoming immune to all the treatments we're giving them. And the bees are saying, well, I'm not going to do anything because they're treating these guys. So the bees get wimpy, the pests get stronger. So that's why, one of the reasons I don't treat my bees. There's another pest, wax moths. Usually they're like the undertakers. They come in when there's other problems. They come in and clean up. The greater wax moth, and the lesser wax moth. They have larvae. It's an insect just like a bee. Well, the larva stage, they do the damage. They'll climb around in the hive, and if you look at your hive and you see something like that, that's the larva from the wax moth, and they're tunneling all over the place. That's the first sign of it, and it looks kind of slimy in there. And here's the next thing you'll see right down here in the lower right corner. They start chewing away as they're developing, and they'll chew away, and it looks like there's cobwebs in there. And there's what the larvae actually look like. And boy, they can destroy the hive. They can destroy the wood. They'll actually latch on and eat the wood. Doesn't matter where you got plastic foundation, they'll get on it too. You can fend them off. The bees can keep them out in the summertime if there's a lot of bees. When you start taking frames of stuff off, though, after you get done with the summer, get less and less bees in there, you take off, you have to store your equipment. They'll eat up your stored equipment too. So you have to take care of it. And what they do is they'll put some moth ice crystals on it, and that kind of keeps them away. Not moth balls, moth ice crystals, okay? Here's the other problem we've got. Little black bug, looks like a black ladybug, called a small hive beetle. They sense out a beehive by, I smell honey. They've got real good olfactory senses, and they can fly right into that opening. You see how small they are. They'll go right in there and they'll hide in the cracks and crevices. The bees will try to trap them over in the corner and keep them out. They don't want to let them get into the frames over there that's lower left, because what they'll do is if they get down in there, they lay eggs down in there. And that's another insect. It goes from egg to larva to pupa. When that does that, though, they come out, and those bees guess what? They started in my hometown, Charleston, South Carolina. That's where they started. A bunch of those ships coming in and out of the port. One of them come in, had a bunch of small hive beetles. That was like in 1978. That's where they started. Now they spread through the whole United States. Well, so I'm going to blame Charleston. But they're quickly becoming hated by beekeepers. Easy to see, but that larva will get in there and slime the hive. A complete mess, total loss of comb, and fecal contamination and fermentation. That's that smell. You start smelling something, woo. The small hive beetles like weak hives, especially ones that are queenless, but they can overwhelm a strong hive. Not real easy, but they can do it. Even in supers, they'll get rid of hives in storage. The bees will actually what they call abscond. They'll take off. Why is that? Because the small hive beetles are going to the bathroom in the honey, and they don't like that. And they say, I'm not going to clean that mess up. I didn't do it. You cleaned it up. So they just take off. They won't clean up these slime frames. They'll go. And also, some people feed their bees pollen. If there's no pollen sources, they put pollen patties. Those small hive beetles will get right in the pollen patties. So they like natural pollen. They like syrup, anything that's sweet. And there's a bunch of traps for them. The key way I do it is just smash them. Smash them as they run. They don't like the light, so they come out, you smash them. Suck them out with a little vacuum cleaner. And there's a bunch of traps you can use. And this is diatomaceous earth. It's like a white powder you put on the ground. It's made like a coral. You put it on the ground, and when they land in the ground, the larva will crawl, and it cuts them up. Because they don't go more than about 3 or 4 feet from the hive. And this is a treatment you can actually drench the ground. Again, it's a chemical. It's an option, not one that I use, but you can actually chemically treat the ground. It's highly toxic to bees. That's why I don't use it. There's traps. These traps are pretty simple. You put the trap inside there. It's got little openings on top of it that the bees will chase the beetles down in there. And you put a little bit of vegetable oil in there, and as soon as the beetle touches the oil, they're dead. But the bees can't get into it. And then you just fill it up and throw them out. And they've got all kinds of traps like this. Actually, they've got little things underneath, little trays that you could put underneath the hive, fill it with some vegetable oil, and they'll go in there and get that. Just drowned in the
Does that work for the mice
Nope, nope, not the mice, just on the beetles. And that's all I've got. Questions? Let's go through a question and answer period. You want to see my bees? They're right down out over here in the hall over there. Stop over and look at them. I didn't tell y'all at first, but we're a nonprofit, and my wife was kind of sickly. She didn't make it down here, up here from Charleston, but I'm the smart one in the family. I married the talented one. She does embroidery work, and she makes a lot of stuff there, and we use that proceeds from that to buy suits for children. And we teach children at the technical college. We teach them beekeeping, how to take care of the bees, because we know how important they are. But well, thank you very much. That's all I have. Okay, appreciate it. And don't forget, if you're here local, don't forget to sign up, and you'll get on the list here, and you'll get information about the local beekeepers. Oh, no ink pens back there. Larry, would you anybody have a pen that we could borrow for?